All right, continuing. Okay, so anyways, why am I so obsessed with all this, right? So the reason why I'm so obsessed with it is I think it's important. I think I think I done figured out American capitalism, right? You're essentially trying to sell sex, right? You'd be like, you buy the Lambo, you buy the Rolls, you buy the, what is, right? And then suddenly all these beautiful women are gonna flock to you, and you're gonna like be able to coitus like all of them, right? And so the reason why I find this such a bad thing is, especially once you get a kid, once you get a son, daughter, whatever, right? So simple heuristic, right? Like even when Ye, or I think even the rapper Nas, right? Or even Jay-Z, right? Is once ninjas get daughters, then your perspective on everything changes, right? Like I think the big issue is like, just think to yourself, guys, super simple, right? If you had a daughter, right, like your blood daughter, would you want your daughter to be in a prawn film? Like, how would you feel about that? I don't think very good. Even like, apparently, this is where like ain't nobody have it super good. Like even Steven Spielberg's, right? Like he's got more money than most people's, right? More money than the right? I think his like adopted daughter, she got into prawn, super sad, right? So anyways, I just think it's a little bit tragic because especially when kids of rich, successful, famous, influential peoples get older, they want to kind of make it on their own, and therefore they actually end up doing kind of bad stuff, whether it be illegal or whatevs, right? Even so, I was doing some research. ChatGPT's, shout out to ChatGPT's, OpenAI, Sam Altman. Y'all's the goat. Yeah, I think Sam's a good CEO. Doing some research on Marie Ozawa, right? I'm like, I done watched her a few times back in the day, right? When I'm my 20s, right? So Canadian, American, Canadian, Japanese, I guess half, right? So I was just reading, I'm like, I'm so curious, like why did she do the prawns? And apparently she just wanted to get into the entertainment industry, and that she found most jobs boring, obviously so. And so yeah, she just wanted an interesting job, right? Yeah, certainly interesting. But I don't like sacred versus the profane. It don't matter if you believe in God or religion, what is, right? There's like certain things one does not do, right? Like for example, me, right? Like as a dude, right? Assuming you're hetero, right? I'm like, would you get a D up your behind if someone gave you $1 billion or $1 trillion? No. How about $10 trillion? No, it's like, if you could solve world hunger. No. If you could cure all the bad things in the world, would you do it? No, right? So anyways, I think it's important, right? Anyways, going back to the thing, right? So I don't know, I think that the internet is mostly bad. Like, I want to have a world in which sense protected too. This is where I think ChatGPT, OpenAI, AI is better than the quote internet, because most of the internet is pretty bad, right? And yeah, I don't want Sen watching that stuff when he grows up. I want to give him like a proper sex ed, right? But doing it like in open, respectful ways. I'm first gen in the States, so I didn't have no real life coaching or father figure. So yeah, I think it's important for us parents to do it. And actually, another pro tip: I think all of us millennials should have at least one kid. I think the bias against having kids is like, it's like, oh, you ain't gonna be happy and independent and travel the world. No, just take your kid along. It's and then the funny thing too is like all these Silicon Valley people trying to upload your consciousness to the brain. I'm like, is you dumb? Just have a kid. It's way easier, faster, and cheaper. And your kid is gonna be the one who outlives you. And that actually the logic of having at least 2 kids. We have 2 kidneys for a reason, 2 lungs. We don't have 2 hearts yet. 2 eyes, 2 ears. Even one of the most greatest lines from well, I could just live my life on the movie 300 and John Wick, right? So like you know, one of the chief attendants of what's his face, King Leonidas, right? He done lost an eye, right? And then King Leonidas be like, what happened to your eye? It's like, not a big deal, sire. I am blessed. It's just an eye. I am blessed that God gave me two. I'm like, so gangsta. Just like, anytime you feel an emo, just watch the movie 300 and you'll feel better, right? But anyways, and actually one of the theories from Nassim Taleb in the Anti-Fragiles is the reason why humans are given redundancy through evolution, or whatever you want to call it, is because yeah, like redundancy is good, right? Like you lose an arm, at least you got another arm, right? You lose a leg, at least you got another leg, right? You lose an eye and stuff like that, right? So in nature, having more than one, having two is useful, like ears, and even like our stereoscopic vision hearing comes from the fact that we got two of the things, right? And being a biped is good. So yeah, ideally have 2 kids, 1 boy, 1 girl if possible. If not, you know, whatevs, right? And even if you have an army of girls, that's cool too, because like one day probably your girl's gonna have kids and then you'll have a male grandson, so it's all good. Just think longevity, try to think 300 years into the future. Even Jay-Z, I mean, I think he's smart because he's very forward-thinking. It's like thinking about, you know, his future progeny. Good thought. Anyways, so yeah, I think maybe the best way to live and approach life and stuff like that is to try to think more like into the future and to think about things which you consider important and critical. Like everyone's gonna think that like, why do you care about X, Y, and Z? Yet I guess the important thing is oftentimes the most unimportant or superficial things are actually the things which matter the most. Even Elon in the interview was like, what's your thoughts about internet privacy? He'd be like, Google doesn't care what kind of porn you watch, right? Which is a funny signal because like obviously Elon watches the prawn, right? And he doesn't care, right? Even like you go on a spaceship, go to Mars, it's gonna take you like 30, 20, I don't know how long, 15 years to get there. You can probably download at least like 100 trillion prawn videos, so you ain't gonna get bored on the ship. Ideally, you know, you have a sexual female partner, right? So anyways, like it's kind of weird because modern day capitalism, consumerism, sex is sold as a commodity, but it's like, what is the point of having sex? To have kids, obviously, right? And so what has happened in modern day times is children are seen as anti-capitalistic because a lot of the industries which sell disposable goods probably gonna make less of a profit if, you know, single working women with a lot of disposable income don't have kids. Then she ain't finna buy no more Gucci or LV, right? The LVMH group, they own everything. Just Google it, right? So yeah, I think it's important because I think the world should be having more kids, and even yeah, sex is sold as a commodity, and I think it's important to think about this critically too, because ultimately I think a critical thing is physiology, like your energy and power, and just think to yourself, if you're about to deadlift 1,000 pounds, you know, 500 kilograms, 501 kilograms by Hafthor, right? Are you gonna rub one out real quick? Nope. Another pro tip: if you're gonna go to a strip club for a wedding or a bachelor party or, you know, what else, right? Super facts pro tip: if you don't want to do nothing bad, just rub one out real quick in the bathroom, and then go to the strip club or whatever kind of activity with the men, so you ain't gonna do nothing dumb, right? So yeah, that's super facts. And it's so funny too, because in some ways, you know, like jerking off or whatever is seen as bad, right? And then actually there's an interesting new sex positivity movement, mostly for women, not really for men. Like for women now, right? Like, you know, women has a vibrator or some sort of blah blah blahs, and it's like seems like, oh, it's kind of cool, trendy. It's like ain't nobody have no problems with it. And actually the funny thing too, right? Modern day, this is the bias, right? Nobody has no issues with lesbian people, right? Because dudes be watching lesbians go at it, and watches the lesbian prod, and then it turns them on, right? You got 3 girls going at it, you got all 3 hot girls doing it. Like, ain't no guy gonna object to that. Yo, that's hot, right? Whereas like the reason why so many people is anti-gay is like America is naturalistically homophobic because we's kind of Christian Protestant prudish thing that's like very anti the body and very anti-sex. And actually even the early Christian fathers, the reason why sex is so vilified, whereas it was seen as a good thing back in ancient Rome and Greece, is because a lot of these early Christian fathers were actually self-flagellating, kind of tormented soul peoples. Therefore, as a consequence, the body is seen as evil, cannot be trusted, blah blah. Even like, if we think about Confucianism, which also runs a lot of the world, oh wow, Amazon MGM Studios, what is that? MRC. Yeah, Jeff U. Smart, Amazon taking over. Actually, it's going to be a good future for, okay, another super pro tips, right? Don't read no headlines, right? Always look at the footnotes, right? So super interesting, the Napoleon movie, right? Ain't nobody know who Joaquin Phoenix is, right? Sexual content, okay, Apple Original Films, right? In Columbia Pictures, a Sony company. Yeah, super facts, right? Columbia Pictures owned by Sony? Read the fine print. Actually, I kind of like this Hunger Games kind of marketing. Everyone hungers for something. That's pretty good. Yeah. Okay, so I think the hard part about this, I really want to watch this Napoleon movies, but the big issue with Napoleon is in the American consciousness, everyone thinks about Napoleon as a shorty guy, and therefore don't find nobody interesting. Who's Godfrey? Apple Original Films too. Ridley Scott. Ridley Scott's good. Some grisly sexual content briefly. Columbia Pictures and Apple Films present. Scott Free Production, Ridley Scott Film, Vanessa Kirby. That girl is interesting because, you know, she's a very attractive woman, but does it look like she got Botox in the face or some plastic surgery? Maybe, because actually I found that, especially being here in the being here in LA, right? A lot of the women, they do this kind of weird thing where they kind of get like Botox, lip injection, facial injections, and they just end up looking like this kind of like grotesque cat lady look. It's actually very quite disturbing looking. Yeah, like this Botox feels like there's this thing. Anyways, yeah. So I mean, I also find it very pernicious too because in LA, I think the guy who invented Lululemon, dude, right? A guy, super smart, is that like actually the most profitable industry is not men, it's actually women, because women are the ones who, my brother-in-law John Narciso told me is this like, women are all, he learned from the Pasadena Art College for the Design Center, Pasadena, I forget, the famous car design school, right? is that you always got to design for women because women are going to be the ones driving the SUVs and stuff like that. And actually, what's really interesting is this is actually the ultimate bias. Whenever you see people driving around the G-Wagons, even if it's a matte black all murdered out, whatever, or the big SUVs, most of them are actually women driving. And it's so funny too because like, as dudes like, oh, who's this guy trying to flex on me driving the murdered out AMG G-Wagon? And then if the sun is very bright in LA, you can see through the tints, is actually often, you know, some sort of woman with sunglasses on driving it. So, that's interesting. And then it looks like the bias is actually the pillar of success for the women, for the men, is often like a man driving, I don't know, a Porsche 911, GT3, GT3 RS, right? And another thing I learned about Lamborghinis, especially when you see them in LA, it seems like 99% of them are either rented or at least short term, tend to be like kind of like tourists who want to just rent a Huracan, which is essentially a Honda Civic on steroids, and just drive around and try to look like a cool guy. It's actually a pro tip with Lamborghini, right? If you don't got the Lambo doors, you're just driving a Toyota Corolla. Yeah, better to get a get a old school car, right? Yeah, so driving that don't make you or like I guess buy a Ferrari. I mean, Ferrari's kind of a little bit fallen out of vogue, but I guess a lot of dudes are still into Ferraris. I mean, personally, I have zero aspiration to own a Ferrari. The funny thing too is that like back in the day, I always thought to myself, like, oh, you know, once I get the matte black murdered out Lamborghini, I'll be happy for the rest of my life. But the super pro tip, the best way to save yourself 350,000, half a milli, is just get ChatGPT Pro Premium paid editions, and then you design your own Lamborghini Countach, Prius, Cybertruck hybrid with the Lambo Suicide scissor doors, and you done made yourself a much more interesting solution. So ChatGPT is a good way to save the monies because actually the notion of power, fame, influence, it's all in the mind. So it's more fun to design your own super ideal car than to buy it.